Hare Krishna. So, very warm welcome to all of you for today's session on the Bhagavad Gita. And today we'll be starting with the 36th shloka of the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But before that, we'll start our session with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we discussed in our previous session, Lord Krishna, he talks about the three modes of material nature. And he tells Arjun to act in a detached manner. And not only that, he also tells Arjun that this whole Varnashram was designed in such a way that everyone has to perform his own duty. And we discussed in our previous session that that was the Vedic system, that every human being used to know his particular status and order of life, and based on that, he'll be working. Shreyan Swadharmo Viguna Par Dharmat Swanushtitat. So a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra, they will all be working on their platform, and no one will try to imitate others. Because ultimately the purpose of this human society was designed in such a way during our Vedic times that every living entity, every human being knew that the goal of life is to please Hari or Krishna. Now today we'll begin our discussion with text 36, shloka number 36. And now we are moving into the last part of the third chapter. And this is very important part because how to move to transcendental platform is covered in this part, and Lord Krishna, he tells Arjun about the different concepts or different platforms of human life and how we can transcend ourselves to higher platforms. So text 36, shloka number 36 of the third chapter. Arjuna uvacha athakena prayukto yam papam charati purushaha anichannapi varshneya baladiva niyojitaha. Arjuna uvacha athakena prayukto yam papam charati purushaha anichannapi varshneya baladiva niyojitaha. Translation. Arjun said, O Varshneya Krishna, what forces a person to act sinfully, even unwillingly, as if driven by some force? So a very beautiful question and a very important question asked by Arjun here to Lord Krishna. And this is a genuine question, and most of us in our life may be having this question. Arjun, in this shloka, he is saying that athakena prayuktoyam. Athakena prayukto. Prayukto means what is that force which is acting on me, because of which papam charati. Papa means sinful activity. So Arjun is asking Lord Krishna that, Krishna, what is that force which is acting on me, because of which sometimes I am forced to act sinfully. Anichannapi. You see, anichannapi. Anichan means even though a person does not want to act sinfully, but still, baladiva niyojitaha. Balad means a very powerful force. Even though anichannapi, anichan means even unwillingly, even though a person does not want to act sinfully, sometimes he may feel bad about it. But still sometimes there is a very powerful force which is acting on a human being, because of which he is forced to act sinfully. So Arjun is asking the reason for that. He is asking Lord Krishna that, Krishna, why it happens like that? That even though I don't want it, but still I am forced to act sinfully. Very important question, very beautiful question. So I'll give you an example. We have seen rainfall. And during rainfall, we see drops of water falling from the sky, from the clouds. Now, the drops of water are pure in nature when they are falling from the sky. But as soon as these drops of water, they touch earth, they come in touch with mud on earth, that water becomes muddy, isn't it? Water, the rainwater, the raindrops are actually intrinsically pure. But as soon as they come in touch with mud on earth, the water becomes muddy. Water becomes contaminated with mud, isn't it? Now, Arjun, why is he asking this question? And not that Arjun is asking only for himself. Because this Bhagavad Gita was spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And Arjun knows that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when Arjun is asking this question, he knows that in future Bhagavad Gita will be the book of Dharma. So that is why the questions which Arjun is asking is not only for himself, but for everyone. So what is he saying? That Krishna, there is a force which is acting on me, because of which sometimes, even though I don't want, but still I act sinfully. So Arjun is feeling bad about it. We all feel bad about it. Sometimes when we unwantedly, if we don't want it, but still sometimes we are forced to act, perform some action which we should not do, we feel bad about it. Every living entity, every human being, when he acts sinfully, generally he feels bad about it. Why? Because soul, the spirit soul, is intrinsically pure. The spirit soul is intrinsically pure in nature. We are all pure in nature. Our natural constitutional position is purity. Because we are all part and parcel of Krishna, the supreme pure. Because we are his part and parcel, so we are also pure. Krishna is Satchidananda. He is the supreme embodiment of Satchidananda. Satchidananda means eternity, knowledge and bliss, cognizance, consciousness. He is the supreme being and he is the supreme pure. And we are all his part and parcel. Just like ocean and drops of ocean. So if we want to examine the water of the ocean, if we want to know what is the taste of the ocean, we cannot go and taste all the water of the ocean. No, we just pick a drop of ocean water and we examine that and we come to know that yes, these are the properties of the ocean water. Isn't it? So the drop of an ocean, the drop of water of an ocean has all the qualities of the complete ocean. Isn't it? So by examining the drop of an ocean, we can know the quality of an ocean. But still, drop of an ocean is very tiny. The drop of an ocean has got no existence without the ocean. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is like an ocean and we are like drops. We'll always remain drops and he will always remain ocean. because that is our constitutional position. That is our eternal position, that we are all part and parcel of Krishna, and we are all part and parcel of Krishna eternally. Now, because the Supreme Lord is also supreme pure, and because we are his part and parcel, we are also intrinsically pure in nature. But when the living entity comes in touch with matter, as soon as the spirit soul starts identifying himself with matter, his consciousness gets contaminated with matter. Just like I gave example of this raindrop, the drops of rain, when they are falling from the sky, the water of the drops of rain, they are intrinsically pure. But when they come in touch with, as soon as they touch earth, they become muddy. They become contaminated. Similarly, we as living entities, we as spirit souls, we are intrinsically pure in nature. But as soon as we come in touch with the three modes of material nature, we have discussed in the previous session that this whole material world is designed by the Supreme Lord. We discussed example of a printer. We discussed example of a video game. So many examples we discussed. So this whole material world is created by the Supreme Lord, and everything what we see in this material world is a product of the three modes of material nature. Okay. So as soon as the living entity, he comes in touch with the three modes of material nature, he forgets his original constitutional position. That forgetfulness is called avidya. We'll discuss about it in the next shloka. So, because of that forgetfulness, a living entity is not able to remember his original position. But still, intrinsically, living entity, that means we all intrinsically are pure in nature. And that is why when we commit something sinful, we feel bad about it. Because we are not programmed to do that. We are not meant to do that. That is not our constitutional position. Our constitutional position is that we are pure. And that is why when we commit some sinful activity, we feel bad about it. This feeling, thinking, emotions, they are not coming from the body, because body cannot think, body cannot feel, body cannot love. That's why a dead body cannot love a dead body, isn't it? So body cannot love. It's all because of the spirit soul. So this bad feeling which comes, this feeling of atonement comes when we do something sinful, is because of the spirit soul, because the spirit soul is intrinsically pure. And that is why when we do something sinful, we feel bad. And that's what Arjun is asking. Arjun is also feeling bad. Why? Because we are pure entities. We are not meant to perform sinful activities. But under ignorance, we sometimes do that. But then Arjun, that's why he's asking, what is that force which is acting on me, because of which, even though I don't want to commit sinful activities, still sometimes I act sinfully. Why? What is the reason? Now, the whole third chapter, the last part of the third chapter, is the answer to this question of Arjun. Very important and very special part of the Bhagavad Gita. So let us see what Lord Krishna tells Arjun. Now, text 37, shloka number 37. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Kam Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidye Namiha Vairinam. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Kam Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha महाशनो महापाप्मा विद्ये नमिह वैरिणम. Translation: The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, said, "This lust, born of the material mode of passion, which degrades into anger when in contact with the lower modes, is known to be a greatly destructive and sinful enemy of this material world." Very important shloka. Now, what is Lord Krishna saying? What is the answer of Lord Krishna in response to the question asked by Arjun in the previous shloka? So, Lord Krishna is saying that Kama Esha Krodha Esha. But Arjun, Kam Esha and Krodh Esha. Kam and Krodh. Rajoguna Samudbhava. This Kam and Krodh. Kam means lust and Krodh means anger. Rajoguna Samudbhava. They are born of Rajoguna. Rajoguna means mode of passion. Mahashano. Mahashano. Mahashano means Ashano means basically one who eats or one who destroys everything. So Mahashano means destructive, which destroys everything. And Mahapapma, Mahapapma means the cause of all the sins. The cause of all the sins. Vidyenamiha vairinam. And Lord Krishna is telling that Vidhi means Arjun, you should know that Enam iha vairinam. Vairi means enemy. Vairi means enemy. So Lord Krishna is telling that Arjun, you should know that this is the greatest enemy of this material world. What is that? Kam and Krodha, born of Rajoguna. This is the most destructive, the cause of all sins, and the greatest enemy of the living entity in this material world. Now, let me take you to one of the shloka which we have discussed in the second chapter. All of you might remember, but let us discuss it. Let us see what we discussed. Just do a recap because the word Krodha comes here. So, now the word Krodha has come. So, if you remember in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna gives us step-by-step procedure of how a living entity falls down in this material world because of lust and anger. Let us see. So, in the second chapter, shloka number 62 and 63, Lord Krishna talks about it. You see on your screen the shloka. We have discussed it, but let's do a recap of this. So Lord Krishna says, Dhyayato Vishayan Punsa Sangasteshu Pajayate, Sangat Sanjayate Kama, Kamat Krodho Vijayate. So if you remember, when we were discussing this shloka, I gave you an example. That suppose I start to speak about some very tasty food item to you, say jalebi or a sweet which you like or any food item. If I start telling you about it every day, for 2 hours I speak about that food item, then what will happen? By hearing about that food item, a person will start to contemplate on it. So that is mentioned here. Dhyayato Vishayan Punsaha. So when a person starts contemplating on a sense object, here the example which we gave of a food item. So when a person starts to contemplate on a food item, what happens? Sangasteshu pajayate. He will develop attachment to that food item because he's constantly contemplating on that. Okay. Now this example can be extended to everything in this world. Whenever we contemplate on a sense object, we develop attachment to that sense object. Now, what happens after attachment? So you see, dhyayato vishayanapunsa sangasteshu pajayate. Sang means attachment. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Now, because of attachment, what happens? Kamaha, lust develops. Okay. When we contemplate on the sense object, we develop attachment to that sense object. And when we develop attachment to that sense object, if we keep contemplating even after that, and there is attachment which develops, after attachment, what happens? Lust. Now, what is lust? Now, coming to the example of the food item, you start contemplating on the food item, you will develop attachment to the food item, and now you want to enjoy that food item. You want to eat it, you want to enjoy it, independent of Krishna. Any enjoyment in this world which we do independent of Krishna, that is called lust. In the Vedic scriptures, it is mentioned that Krishna Indriya Priti Vancha Tare Naam Kam, Krishna Indriya Priti Vancha Tare Prem Naam, Atma Indriya Priti Vancha Tare Naam Kam. That means that when we desire to gratify our senses, these gross material senses, it is called kam, it is called lust. But when we desire to satisfy the senses of the Lord, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, that is called prem, that is called love. So that is the difference between love and lust. They both look similar, but there is difference. So that's why here it is mentioned, sangat sanjayate kamaha. So when we develop attachment to the food item, we want to enjoy or eat that food item independent of Krishna, then that develops lust. Okay. After that, what happens? Kamat krodho vijayate. And when lust is not fulfilled, suppose you contemplate on the food item, you want to enjoy that food item, and now you have gone and purchased or cooked that food item, and now you want to eat that food item. And when you are about to eat it, if someone snatches away from you, then what will happen? Anger will develop. We'll become angry. So, unfulfilled lust is the cause of anger. So, what happens after anger? Let us see. Once anger develops, krodh, what happens after that? Next shloka. Lord Krishna says, krodhad bhavati sammoha. So, when anger develops, we become bewildered. We forget everything. Sammoha means bewilderment. And if you remember, when we were discussing this shloka in the second chapter, I gave an example. It's a real story of a person who was very angry, and his little child, he did some mischief and he beat him so much that that child died. And later on, this father was regretting that what I have done. But at that time, when he was angry, he forgot completely that he is a father. And that little child is just a little child. He forgot everything. So, you see, that is what is mentioned. Krodhad bhavati sammoha. When krodh develops, when anger develops, we forget completely. We forget ourselves. And sammohat smriti vibhrama. Smriti means we lose memory. Whatever we have discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, everything you will forget. When anger, when that force, that urge, that powerful force of anger will come, we'll forget all the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. Right? And when we forget the knowledge, because intelligence works on the platform of knowledge. We have discussed Buddhi Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is also called Buddhi Yoga. Why? Because intelligence works on the platform of knowledge. So Smriti Vibhrama means no knowledge. We'll forget all knowledge. And then Smriti Bhranshat, Buddhi Nasho, Buddhi, intelligence will not work. And when intelligence will not work, then what will happen? Pranashyati, destruction will happen of the living entity. Okay. So now coming back to the shloka that we were discussing. The 36th shloka of the third chapter. 37th shloka of the third chapter. Now let us see. Now, the aspect that we discussed in the second chapter extending. Now this shloka is just like an extension of that part of the second chapter. So now what is Lord Krishna saying here? Kama esha krodha esha. Kama esha krodha esha. Kama means lust. Just now we discussed about lust in the second chapter. Lust means attachment. Because of attachment, when we want to enjoy the sense object, that is called lust. Okay. And when lust degrades, it degrades into anger. Okay. So kama esha krodha esha. So kam means lust and krodha means anger. These two, rajo guna samudbhavaha. Now the root cause of anger and lust is rajoguna. As we know that this material world is it is made up of the three modes of material nature, and of this sattva guna is the highest. Sattva guna means mode of goodness. It is the highest, and generally mode of goodness is predominated by knowledge. Okay. Rajoguna, it is predominated by sense gratification. Okay. Rajoguna is predominated by sense gratification. So that is why Lord Krishna is telling here that Kama Esha Krodha Esha, this lust and anger is a product of the mode of passion. It is a product of the mode of passion. So it is described in Srimad Bhagavatam that the spirit soul, when he enters into this material creation, because of his contact with the three modes of material nature, because of his just like we have discussed an example of ocean. Suppose if you fall in an ocean, then you lose all control. Everything is then controlled by the ocean. And you have to, the way the waves of the ocean, they want that, that's how we will be moving up and down. We'll be tossed by the waves of the ocean and we have no control. Similarly, as soon as the living entity, he enters into this material creation, he comes under the influence of the three modes of material nature. And because of the three modes of material nature, and because the three modes of material nature, they create the body. And because the living entity, when he enters into this material world, because of the three modes of material nature, he is given a body. So because of his identification with the body, he forgets his original identity, that he is a spirit soul and he is a part and parcel of Krishna. He is not this body. He forgets that. That forgetfulness is called avidya. That forgetful state of the living entity is called avidya or ignorance. So, because of avidya, because of forgetfulness, the living entity, he forgets that he is a part and parcel of Krishna and he starts to identify himself with the body. Right? And because of his identification with the body, Kam and Krodh follows. Because actually speaking, the constitutional position of the living entity is that he is part and parcel of Krishna. We are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and our relationship with the Supreme Lord is loving relationship. Human life is meant for love of God, to develop our lost relationship with Krishna. So the relationship we have with Krishna is loving relationship. Right? Love is our natural constitutional position. Servitude, love. Body cannot love. Love is intrinsic to the spirit soul. So loving propensity is natural propensity of the spirit soul. Why? Because we are lovers of Krishna. Because our intrinsic character is to love Krishna. So when we come in touch with this material creation, because of the three modes and because of avidya, forgetfulness, we forget that we are lovers of Krishna. But loving propensity is there. Although we forget that we are actually lovers of Krishna, we forget our original loving relationship, but still that loving relationship, that loving propensity is there in the spirit soul. And that's why we keep reposing that love on other things. Someone loves his country, family, mother, father, brother, sister, husband, wife, children. These are all loving propensities which we have for Krishna, but we are pasting it on other things in this material creation. Right? So, what is lust? Lust is a transformation of love only. Just like milk. If when milk comes in touch with a sour chemical, then that milk gets transformed into yogurt or curd. Right? So lust is a degraded transformation of milk. Sorry, milk means love. So lust is degraded transformation of love. It's a perverted transformation of love. Just like curd or yogurt is a transformation of milk. So because loving propensity we all have, but as of now we have forgotten our real love. So that loving propensity gets transformed into lust because of this second mode of material nature, which is rajoguna, which is mode of passion. Because this material world is predominated by mode of passion. Most of the living entities in this material world are in predominantly mode of passion. Mode of passion is most active in this material world. And very quickly, mode of passion degrades into mode of ignorance. Mode of goodness means it is predominated by knowledge. Mode of passion is no knowledge, only sense gratification. And mode of ignorance means laziness and sleep, ignorance, complete ignorance. So very quickly, this mode of passion degrades into mode of ignorance. Degradation is a natural symptom of this material creation. Everything degrades with time, everything. Nothing progresses with time. If we want something to progress, we have to endeavor. But if we don't endeavor, automatically there will be degradation. So, when a living entity he comes in touch with this material creation, his natural love for Krishna gets transformed into lust. And unfulfilled lust leads to anger. Lust, when comes in touch with lower modes or mode of ignorance, it gets transformed into anger. And just now we discussed in the second chapter that anger brings us into complete ignorance. Buddhi nashad, we forget ourselves in anger. And that creates illusion. And that illusion which is created is the root cause of this material existence. That is the root cause of our existing in this material world. That's why you see Lord Krishna, what is he saying? Kama esha krodesha rajogun samudbhavaha mahashano. Mahashano means most destructive. And mahapapma, most sinful. Vidhi enam iha vairinam, greatest enemy. So lust and anger, which are born of mode of passion. Lust and anger, which are born of mode of passion, are the most destructive, the cause of all sin, and the greatest enemy of the living entity in this material creation. Right? So just like milk gets transformed into curd or yogurt, When milk comes in touch with sour chemical, it gets transformed into yogurt. Or I also gave an example of raindrops falling from sky. So raindrops which are falling from sky, they are intrinsically pure. But as soon as raindrops come in touch with mud, they become muddy. Water becomes muddy, isn't it? Water becomes dirty. Now, yogurt cannot be turned back into milk. It's almost impossible to turn back yogurt into milk. There is no technology which can convert or which can transform yogurt into milk. We have a lot of technology which can convert milk into yogurt, but yogurt cannot be transformed into milk. It's almost impossible. Similarly, now when raindrops are falling from sky, they are intrinsically pure. But as soon as they come in touch with mud on earth, they become muddy. Now, muddy water, to extract pure water again from muddy water is very difficult. That is why my Guru Maharaj used to say that these modern educational institutes, they are slaughterhouses of education. Why? Because nowadays, I have seen parents, they admit children, even when they are 2-year old, they are admitted into these slaughterhouses of education, these modern educational institutes and schools and colleges. And the child enters these institutes at the age of 2. And none of these institutes talk about Krishna. None of these institutes talk about the spirit soul. So from the age of 2 years, this child is systematically trained into atheistic knowledge. He's systematically trained into this science which is without Krishna. And this goes on till he is 30-year-old or 40-year-old. And then a living entity, then the person, sometimes if he becomes inquisitive, sometimes he wants to study the Vedic scriptures, but then it becomes very difficult because of 40 years he has been trained in this atheistic science, modern science. You see, so my Guru Maharaj used to say that these are slaughterhouses of education. In these institutes, there is systematic slaughter of the spirit soul. That means degradation of spirit soul happens because there is no talk about spirit. There is no talk about God. There is no talk about who we are. They talk about the body, but they do not talk about the spirit soul, which is because of which this body is running. That they don't talk about. So, because of this, living entities, all the human beings, they are trained for sense gratification in these institutes. They are simply training everyone for sense gratification. Bodily platform, bodily concept of life. And because of this, a living entity is induced into sense gratification. And sense gratification is mode of passion. And gradually a living entity gets degraded into mode of ignorance. And this human life, which is so rarely attained, is wasted. So if a living entity is fortunate, if he comes in good association sometimes, if he comes in touch with mode of passion, sometimes he gets a good body. But again, as soon as the pious credit gets over, again he becomes a human being. And if he is fortunate, if he comes in touch with pure devotees, or if he comes in touch with good people in mode of goodness, again he goes up. Otherwise, if he comes in touch with mode of ignorance, he gets a lower body, lower species. He degrades. Again, when the impious credits or sinful credits get over, again he becomes a human being. Again, if he is fortunate, he goes up. Otherwise, again goes down. So you see, like this, up, down, it keeps happening perpetually. And this cycle is called cycle of birth and death. This cycle is called cycle of karma, law of karma. And then after many lifetimes of sense gratification, a human being, because ultimately spirit soul is lover of Krishna. So after many, many lifetimes of struggling in this material world and suffering continuously, the soul starts to search for the truth. Because so much of suffering has taken place. He has suffered so much after so many lifetimes that now he wants to search for the truth. And in the Vedic scriptures, that stage is called Athato Brahma Jigyasa. When a living entity, after many, many lifetimes of suffering in this material world, he starts to search for the truth, that stage is called Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now he wants to know the truth. Questioning starts. He starts to question his existence. Who am I? Why are there miseries in this material creation? Why do I have to die one day? My grandfather died, his father died, his father died. Everyone died. So one day I will also die. What will happen after death? What is consciousness? What is the purpose of this creation? Who is God? What is my relationship with Krishna, God? So these questions are called Brahma Jigyasa. So a living entity, he starts to question the truth of life, the existence of life. And then when he is sincere, the Lord as Paramatma within the heart, Krishna directs him to the spiritual master, his guru. When a living entity is sincere and is seeking the truth, then Krishna directs him to guru, his spiritual master. And that's when his journey, his revival of love for Krishna starts by the process of Shravanam and Kirtanam. His lost relationship with Krishna, his natural loving propensity for Krishna, which got lost, which he forgot, that revival starts. He starts to revive his love for Krishna because of the mercy of Guru, because of the mercy of the spiritual master. When he comes in touch with a lover of Krishna. Because if a person wants to know God, there is no other way. He has to go to a person who knows God. By material science and material knowledge, no one can understand God. So that's when his journey back to home, back to Godhead, his journey of revival of his lost relationship with Krishna starts. His revival of love for Krishna starts when he comes in touch with the spiritual master. So ordinarily, it's very difficult to turn yogurt back into milk. Milk means love for Krishna and yogurt means lust. Or just like I gave example of water droplets falling from sky. So water, when the drops of water when falling from sky, when they come in touch with mud, they become contaminated. Now it's very difficult to convert again contaminated water back to pure water. Very difficult. But it can happen. So the Shravanam and Kirtanam, which is Bhakti Yoga. Shravanam means hearing Krishna Katha, hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and chanting of 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. These two are called medicine. So by following these two processes, a person very quickly revives his original consciousness. Although it is very difficult, but still it can be done by this process of Shravanam and Kirtanam. Hearing of Krishna Katha, which is Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and chanting of 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. These two processes can revive the consciousness which a person has lost through millions of lifetimes. That original consciousness can be revived by the powerful process of Shravanam and Kirtanam. So that's what Lord Krishna is telling here. That this lust and anger, which is born of the three modes of material nature, they are the greatest enemy of the living entity. Now, next shloka, very, very important again. Last shloka of today's session. Text 38, shloka number 38. धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निर् यथा दर्शो मलेन च यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस् तथा तेनेदमावृतम् धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निर् यथा दर्शो मलेन च यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भस् तथा तेनेदमावृतम्. Translation: just as smoke covers fire, dust covers a mirror, and a womb covers an embryo, similarly, lust covers living entities to varying degrees. Now you see. Now in the previous shloka, we discussed that how lust and anger are the greatest enemy of the living entity, and they cover the living entity, and a living entity forgets his original constitutional position as lover of God, lover of Krishna. Now here in this shloka, Lord Krishna is mentioning that to what degrees this lust covers the living entity. You see, so it is mentioned dhumena avriyate. Avriyate means to cover. Dhumena means smoke. So 3 examples are given. First, we will discuss these 3 examples, and then I'll tell you what is the meaning of these 3 examples. So dhumena means smoke, and vahnir means fire. So the first example is fire covered by smoke. Okay. Second example, yatha darsho malena cha. Darsh means mirror, and mal means dust or impurity. So when mirror is covered by dust, okay, this is the second example. Third example, yatha ulben avrito garbhas. Ulbena means embryo or little child who is within the womb of the mother. Avrito means to be covered. Garbhas means the child is covered, the embryo is covered by the womb of the mother. This is the third example. Okay. Tatha tene damavritam. So Lord Krishna is telling, in this way, living entities are covered to different degrees by lust and anger. They cover living entities to different degrees. Now let us see what is the meaning of these examples. Suppose smoke is covered by fire. If you go to some cold places, especially in northern part of India, during the winter season, it's very cold, it's chilling cold. And you will see that people, they'll collect some wood at one place and they would kindle fire to the wood, which will create little warm environment near this burning wood. And many people will be sitting around to receive some warmth from this fire. Now, after some time, the wood, this burning fire reduces and smoke starts coming out. Or especially if you kindle fire inside a closed room, you will see that lot of smoke comes out. And sometimes it so happens that the smoke is, so much of smoke comes out that the smoke covers the fire. And look, it looks as if the fire has got extinguished and smoke has covered the whole fire. But if you just go near the fire and fan it little, just a little bit of fanning is done, then again the fire gets kindled very easily. Just by fanning it little, this fire can be kindled. Okay. So why this example is given? This example is given to substantiate those people, those human beings who are in the mode of goodness. Those human beings who are mode of goodness, because they can be very easily promoted to spiritual platform. A person who is in mode of goodness, it's very easy for him to move to spiritual platform. He can be converted into, he can be converted, or he can be promoted, he can be transformed into a devotee very easily, right? So this is example is given for those people who are in mode of goodness, because just by little effort, just like uh, fire is covered by smoke, so just by little effort that fire can be kindled, isn't it? Although it looks like fire is extinguished, but just you fan this fire, and because smoke is there, then a little bit of fanning will again reignite the fire. Or you put little camphor in the fire and fire will get reignited. Similarly, the original consciousness of a living entity or a human being who is in higher modes, that original consciousness can be reignited very easily. That's why sometimes we see that some devotees, they'll come to the temple and we just tell him about Krishna and he very quickly becomes a devotee, a lover of Krishna, very quickly. And some people, you may whole life endeavor very hard with them, but still they'll not get transformed. So that is because a person who is already in higher modes, it's very conducive and it's very easy to transform him, to convert him into a lover of Krishna. Now, the second example is given of a mirror which is covered by dust. So this is for those people who are in lower modes or rajoguna or mode of passion. So when mirror is covered by dust, if we want to see ourselves in the mirror clearly, we need to endeavor. We need to first take a wet cloth. Then with that wet cloth, we have to wipe the mirror. And then again with dry cloth, we have to wipe it so that mirror is clean. And when mirror is clean, crystal clear image can be seen in the mirror. Crystal clear reflection can be seen in the mirror. So this example is given for those people who are in mode of passion, and it requires effort. We have to put lot of efforts to transform that person. He can be transformed, but after a lot of efforts. And it takes long time for that person. He comes in touch with the temple. He starts listening to Bhagavad Gita. Then gradually, it takes time for that person to get fully transformed. So it requires effort. Whereas a person who is in mode of goodness, very quickly, the first example. The second example is for those people who are in lower modes, and it is very, very difficult. Although they can be transformed, they can be converted, but it's very difficult. Lot of effort is required. Now, the third example is of embryo covered by the womb of the mother. Now, the embryo or the little child who is situated within the womb of the mother, it's helpless condition. You can't do anything. You cannot just tear apart the embryo. You cannot do that. You cannot tear apart the womb of the mother. No. That child is in helpless condition, in complete darkness, right? So why this example is given of embryo covered by the womb? This example is given for those living entities who are in mode of ignorance, just like plants and trees. Now, plants and trees can never ever be converted into devotees of Krishna. It's impossible. These are lower species. These are condemned species. Animal life and plant life, they are condemned species. You can never convert animals and plants into devotees of Krishna. Why? Because they have acted sinfully in their past life, and that's why they have got this body. They are disqualified from love for Krishna for many lifetimes. Now, for plants and trees, only after many, many lifetimes, when they become human beings, only then they can be transformed. But as of now, they are in helpless state. No one can help them. They can never ever be converted into devotees of Krishna. They can never ever at least for many lifetimes, it's almost impossible for them to develop love for Krishna again. So this example is given for people or living entities who are in mode of ignorance, and it's almost impossible to bring them back to their original consciousness. Almost impossible to transform them and make them lovers of Krishna. So that's what Lord Krishna is telling, that living entities are covered by different degrees of lust. Thin layer, thicker layer, and very thick layer. So very thick layer of lust means almost helpless condition, which is the example given here of embryo covered by the womb of the mother. Little thinner is the medium, or the people who are covered in mode of passion. So thinner layer of lust is there, and the example is given of dust covering the mirror. So with little efforts, with if we do some efforts, lot of effort is required, but they can be transformed. And the first example is of smoke covering the fire. So very quickly and just by little endeavor, these people can be transformed and converted into devotees of Krishna again. So that's how Lord Krishna gives beautifully these three examples to substantiate that different living entities are covered by different degrees of this lust. And the degrees to which lust covers them, to that degree, it becomes difficult to convert them. The lower the thickness, or the lower the effect of lust, the higher the percentage of transforming them. The higher the degree of lust, the lower the percentage of transforming them. So that's what we are seeing here. Now, from the next shloka, we will be moving to the last part of the third chapter. Next session will be the last session of the third chapter, and very, very special part we are entering into, esoteric part of the third chapter. So that will be covering in the next session. Today's session will stop here. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming for today's session. Hare Krishna.